According to the Sickle Cell Support Foundation of Jamaica, the incidence of sickle cell disease in Jamaica is relatively high, as 1 in every 150 children born has a form of sickle cell disease. Today I sat down with Noel Bell to hear his story. So Noel, give thanks for take the time to have this reasoning today.
I respect.
I want to get right into it.
Mm-hmm.
So, who is Noel?
Well, the question of who is Noel can sometimes cause you to talk about all of the stuff that you do. But at the core, I'm just the guy who just wants to live life a bit. Someone who is an advocate for many things, more so sickle cell. I'm a cinematographer, photographer. I'm also a graphic designer, but don't really pay that much attention these days. I'm a Christian. I guess I want to leave it there so for now until we get inside the interview.
Cool, multi-talented. Tell me about growing up. What was it like? You mentioned that you have sickle cell.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about that. How was that experience growing up?
Well, to be honest, growing up had its challenges because, as you know, sickle cell is one of those diseases that you start with it at birth. So unlike diabetes or hypertension that you get as you go along, sickle cell is something that you're born with. So just for the person who might not understand what the illness is, it's a blood disorder that you can only get it from your parents, meaning that one parent must have the trait and another have the trait. And when both of them come together, you get what is called full-blown sickle cell. Mm-hmm. So I grew up with full-blown sickle cell, which meant that majority of my life was spent in hospital. It comes with a high medical bill, medications run into the hospital. It requires a really good support system. So growing up, it was challenging for myself and the family. Education-wise, the family had to make sure that they stuck close to the teachers to get notes. Whenever something would go wrong, like I would start feeling pain, be close by so that they could pick me up and take me to the hospital. You tend not to have a regular childhood. So a simple thing as playing football or street cricket, you don't get those experiences. Or if you cheated and took those experiences, it came at a consequence of probably going to the hospital.
What kind of stigma did you face growing up, going to school with the other kids who would not have been used to somebody like you who would have been suffering from sickle cell disease?
It's interesting you should ask a question like that. The stigmas are long, there's a long list, but some of the frequent ones that I would have experienced is, and I can laugh about it now, is banana man or half dead. Or just the fact that people would say, yo, you look like Kardashian a dog, you know, or your name Molly.
So them call you all them thing there?
Yeah, man. I remember first form high school, they would say, yo, Curry man, come dog. You know, or I remember even in 10th grade, we had a biology class and the whole conversation of sickle cell came up. And because the teacher was explaining that if you think about a crescent moon, that's how the blood cells would shape. Yeah. And a classmate of mine said, oh, that means it's like a half a moon. And she said, more unlikely. And then he said, oh, then that means I know a half dead man. I know the class erupted in laughter. But if only persons knew, you know, that it's more than just the laughter, because your life is jeopardized because of those blood cells not being properly shaped. So I often say to persons that if you understand the nature of how your blood works, you understand the severity of sickle cell, because your blood goes to every area of your body except the ear. So all areas of your body is compromised, so from the brain right down to your toe. That's the thing. So even with stigma, it's not just kids alone. You have to look at even on families. So like parents would tell their kids, oh, don't play with anybody who have sickle cell, they might die on you, and just the whole list of negativity that is surrounded in it. So it can be a lonely experience.
Yeah, that exactly is supposed to affect relationships as well, I guess, because if a parent is telling their child not to, play with the next child because they might die.
Yeah.
What about a parent telling their daughter not to
be with, and I have faced that. So yeah, I can remember being in a relationship with this young lady, and I remember the summer she went away to visit her aunt in New York, and she called me one night, possibly about 10 o'clock, and she said, Noel, I'm breaking up with you. And my immediate response was, why? What did I do? Because I felt like I did something I probably was unaware of. And she said, it's the old sickle cell thing. And I said, but I felt like we had this conversation already and you were on board. And she's like, no, having spoken to my aunt who is a nurse, she's saying that people like you don't necessarily live long and are going to always have to be in the hospital with you. And just the narrative that she gave me, I felt a little bit hopeless, because I was like, having to deal with this all your life, it feels like it's now becoming an identity. So you start to wonder about, love. Am I going to find love? Am I going to be the guy who just starts relationship but never get to the stage of marriage? Because, growing up in a Christian home, marriage is one of those things that you look forward to. So it has affected many relationships, even to the point where while dating and you get introduced to family, you have to then navigate how you're going to have that conversation. Because as a man, parents, they're not just handing over the daughter, so to speak, for happiness only, but they're concerned with how are you going to handle work, how are you going to live with sickle cell and be a proper provider. So these are some of the questions you have to deal with when it comes to relationship.
With experience in all that, Zin, you find that there is much support, much outreach for people living with sickle cell across the country. You find that exists as something developed?
No, I mean, from what I say is just a matter of, you probably just need to know the other person's living with the disease. But outside of that, there's not a general awareness to the population to say, this is how you support persons with sickle cell. The truth is, in looking back, probably if I never have the disease, I probably wouldn't really hear much about it. You look at the fact that it's September, which is recognized worldwide as Sickle Cell Awareness Month, and not much is done in the Jamaican space, aside from the Sickle Cell Support Foundation, who tries to drive. But they are just like a speck in a bucket. So not much is done, even within the hospitals, to say this is how you properly support. Because I feel as if sickle cell patient care is a little bit different than regular patient care. And sometimes when you go to the doctors and you say, I'm having a crisis, sometimes the response, and I'm not going to say it's all doctors, but sometimes the response time is so bad that you're in terrible pain. And I always say to the person, just imagine the worst pain you've ever felt in your life. All of that happening right across your body at the same time. That is what a person with sickle cell go through when they're having a crisis. So they're having pain in several areas of the body. They go to the doctor and sometimes they're told to sit, sometimes for an hour, sometimes up to 3 hours in that pain. So there's not much support even from a government perspective, where proper policies are made for persons living with sickle cell. So what you tend to have is that persons living with sickle cell who don't have a great support system growing up, it translates for the rest of their life. So they don't have a great support system at work, or they sometimes don't have work at all to even finance themselves to get basic medication. So in terms of support in Jamaica, we have a far way to go.
You did a documentary, shedding some light on what it's like to live with sickle cell disease, some of the ways to cope. Tell me some more about that.
So for me, that was therapy. Because for many years, I had friends who they could not, there was no way for them to relate with the experience. So I wanted a way in which I could drive home the point that it's not an easy road. And I just decided to ask a couple of friends who were close to me to help me bring this vision to life. The document, when we started doing it, even me myself, I started realizing that, whoa, it's really not an easy road. Because, yeah, you've been living the experience, but then when you start to hear other person's story, you start to realize that more really needs to be done. Even the fact that, persons living with it, how, I want to use the word, how poverty can even make it feel worse.
Yeah.
Because I recognize that there was a difference when you could afford certain things as opposed to when you can't afford certain things. So I'm probably one of the patients that was blessed because my father worked at one of the major hospitals in Kingston. So even though medications was expensive, he could leverage the fact that he works in the hospital system and go to the pharmacy and get some stuff. That aside, even how family life makes a difference, because one of the persons I interviewed, Beverly, she never had family that supported her, so her experience seemed worse in comparison to mine or that of others, where every time she needed to go to the hospital, she was alone, she needed to get her x-ray, she was alone, just need to move around when she's in that pain. It was just a lonely experience. Then there is a side of even persons who die while going to the hospital. And I can make mention of EJ, who was in the documentary, recently passed away because of poor patient care management. So when we decided to do the documentary, it was just me saying, if this is a tool that we can get awareness out there, it's a start.
Yeah, it's definitely a start. What you do outside of this though? What you do outside of, advocating for?
For sickle cell, I have fun, As I say, I'm a photographer. I was a part of a team that managed a lab in Pixel. We closed down that lab. I decided to come back to school. So currently at the University of the West Indies, where I'm pursuing a degree in philosophy, theology, and IMC. So I tend to have fun. I am the event coordinator for Shabak, which is a worship concert, which that also tries to raise fund for the Sickle Cell Support Foundation. But on an average day, you'll probably catch me at home watching some YouTube video and just enjoying.
If you could say a few words for people who are not living with the sickle cell disease, what would you say? And also, what would you leave with people who are living with the disease?
All right, so for persons who aren't living with the disease, I tell them, first thing is to get tested. Because a lot of times the idea of, oh, I don't know anybody in my family who has a disease, the trait still runs in a lot of Jamaicans' blood. Because the statistic says it's 1 in every 150, which means that even if you don't know a direct family member, chances are it's in your blood, so just get tested. And the part I would add to that is there's so many different types of trait out there. The list of them goes on and on. And then for those that are living with the disease, listen, there's hope. And I believe that lifestyle also helps. Because what might work for me may not work for you, but what I can say is that just find what works for you and live. I mean, life is short and you're already compromised, so just make the most of the days that you have a peaceful day.
Just live.
Just live.